There we go. We're recording. So, all right, guys, thanks for joining me. This session is primarily to leave it open for Q&A. So we talked about a big concept last week. I do want to kind of rehash that just really quick. But if you have a question or anything you want to ask, like that's primarily what I want to offer is as part of this coaching is, man, let's just dive into actual stuff that you might be dealing with. So give me a wave or something, and then I'll stop and we'll jump into your direct questions. So anything right off the bat that you want to hit up on when it comes to like on-ramps from last week's conversation?
Mike, could you just kind of rehash that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's dive in. Here's this screen. Can you guys see my screen? Am I sharing?
No. Oh yeah. Okay. Now it is.
There we go. All right. Always have to double check that. All right. So here's the screen, and I'll go back to last week's conversation. Ultimately, again, we want to take you through this journey to help you get clear about who you are. From that, create the experience that you need to reach the people you're trying to reach. Then help you begin to attract people. And then once you attract people, the job's not done. We want you to get buy-in. So people have to then decide to buy into the church and what you're offering. So ultimately, you'll be your church's brand expert. And last week we talked about the experience part of things. So experience is what we create. It's a simple way to put it is branding is the perception that you're building. Marketing is the experience that you create. So marketing is not just like a flyer or a website. Marketing is the people at the door greeting people as they come in. That's part of your marketing. It's the experience that you create. So we last week we talked about on-ramps and how on-ramps are a great way to be strategic about inviting people to your church on a regular basis. So we're creating an experience well in advance so that really we can be better stewards of what God has given us, the money that God has given us, but also the people that God has given us. Like how many times have we in church world asked people to do things at last minute or to show up somewhere or to just, fill in somewhere. We're stressing people out. And I've been a part of that on both ends of it, like asking people to do it as part of church staff, but I've also been a part of it like where I'm serving. And man, I'm drowning because there's so many things being thrown at me. So I've been on both sides of it, and we just need to be better as the church leadership, so that we're being good stewards of what God has given us, both financially. Again, financially, man, how many times have we made that last minute order that cost an extra $20 for shipping? Was that just a need or? Okay, we need to be better than that. We need to know that at the event, we're going to have a call to action. We need a flyer. So part of our planning is to make sure the flyer is done in advance, so we're not rushing that order. So here's the concept. Looks a little complicated, but really it's simple. There's two things. You have on-ramps and you have lanes. Actually, there's three things. The third thing is a call to action. Okay, on-ramps are events that are strategically a safe place to invite people to come to the church. Okay. A safe place, the reason I say that is because sometimes we do events and they're internal. So we have a lot of internal language and a lot of internal things that happen, or even like very Christian things that happen that are really good, but man, it's confusing for somebody that's new. So for example, like I just went to a church to visit this past weekend, and I'm a visitor. That's one of the things I like to do is just go visit churches just to stay fresh on like, what does it mean to be a visitor at a church? Well, towards the end of service, the pastor laid hands on people, had him come up front and laid hands on people and prayed for them. So I'm used to that. Like I've been in church world a lot and I'm totally used to that. But I haven't been around that recently. The move to Florida and all that stuff, I haven't been around that recently. And you know what? I felt a little awkward in that moment. Like, oh man, I don't know what to do right now. So what I'm saying is like, not to take that out of your experience, but if you're going to do an event that's an on-ramp to the church, like try to make it a safe place where if somebody invites their coworker, their neighbor, the family member that hasn't been to church before, that it's going to be a place where they can come and feel like, man, I want to be a part of this. And it won't be confusing to them because there's something, and and God's the factor, like he's the X factor. He can do whatever he wants to. I'm just saying as we plan it, like, let's just make sure we plan something that is strategic towards creating a safe place for people to invite. Because what you want to do with the people in your church is build trust with them. If you're saying, hey, you can invite your coworker, you can invite your family member, your friend to come to this event, make sure they can trust you with that. Make sure they can trust you so that something doesn't go kind of in a direction they weren't planning. So that next time you ask they'll do it.
Mhm.
And then, so those are events. And then on-ramps. On-ramps are areas of the church where family takes place, where people get into relationship with each other. People aren't able to just leave. They connect with each other. So there are 4 areas that I have found in most churches that are good on-ramps. One is your weekend service. That's kind of the shallow end of the pool. Relationships can happen on a shallow end on that, so that's not bad. Maybe you can point people towards a series that's coming up, something along those lines. The next one is small groups, whether that's during the week or if you do them as Sunday school on Sundays, but small groups of some kind, great place. Any sort of discipleship program you have, maybe you do Financial Peace University. That's great. Or maybe you do a Beth Moore Bible study or something else. Those discipleship programs are great to build relationship and point people towards. And then maybe you have a serve team or different types of teams. That's kind of the deep end of the pool. I feel like if you get people there, and the churches that we study, the people that get to a serve team where they're serving in the ministry, they're going to stick around for a while.
Yeah.
Like they're invested. They're building relationships or rubbing shoulders with other people. They're going to stick around for a while. So those are great areas. So the call to action at the event ideally would point to one of these 4 areas. So the event needs a call to action at the event. Like you're going to spend, let's say, $2,000 getting people there. You're going to ask all these volunteers to show up at this event and volunteer like 100 hours of their time. All that needs to go towards building the church. So as on a business or a marketing perspective, all those resources, I'm not, again, this whole conversation that we're having, like, it's not a spiritual thing. God can do whatever he wants to do on the spiritual side. You guys are the pastors, the ministers. You guys do ministry the way that God leads you to. But on a business side, how is all those resources going to move the needle for you to get people to become members and contribute to the vision? So it needs to have a call to action, a next step. So the quick example we talked about last week is if you have a men's ministry event, let's say you invite a guest speaker and they speak on a topic, it would be great for you to create alignment so that maybe after that event, there's a men's small group that starts up dealing with that topic. So it then takes that topic further to where now people have a call to action to be like, hey, if this was a message that resonated with you, that if like being a leader in your home, let's say they spoke on being a leader in your home. If that's a message that resonates with you, then there's a Bible study where we're going to read the book Wild at Heart. And we're going to go through that study for about 8 weeks together in these small groups. And just give people a call to action where you can plug them into a lane, and that's going to really move the needle for your church. The last thing to point out is on the right-hand side, I'm encouraging you to think by quarters. So quarter 1, 2, 3, 4. In the business world, that's how people plan things quite a bit, is quarter 1, 2, 3, 4. It takes a big idea of a year and it breaks it down into manageable chunks. So it's good mentally to be able to think by quarter. And each quarter, ideally, should have one on-ramp. And I gave you a few that were just kind of off the top good ones. So a New Year's series in January is great. People coming back to church. Easter, Mother's Day are great in quarter 2. Quarter 3, some sort of outreach where you go into the community. A September series is really good to launch something along those lines, or maybe an event in September. And then quarter 4, maybe you have a fall event, some October event, or maybe November, and then Christmas. So those are great, like just on-ramps for you to just have in place 4 intentional times of the year where you're just very, very intentional about getting people into the church. It's when churches forget to invite other people that we become kind of strange and weird, and we build this club mentality. So if we just say, hey, every so often, we're just going to make sure we're intentional. We're going to clean things up. We're going to paint the walls. We're going to make sure signs are up because we're expecting guests to come in. So that was the overall concept. Any thoughts or questions with that?
Can you give more examples of what that September or that Q3 would look like?
Yes. So great example. Q3, July, August, September. So July, August, September. The ARC churches, they pick, I think it's July 16th, and they all do like a outreach event in the community. So if your church picks a date and does like an outreach, so maybe you clean up the local middle school and paint, and you just kind of get out there and serve the community in some way. Maybe you help put together some playground equipment. You could call the city hall and see like, hey, where's some places that we can help our city and serve our city. There might be an event like a parade or coming up in our community. There's a 4th of July celebration. And so we're kicking around the idea like serving at that event. And I mean like serving, like picking up trash, like volunteering to do the things that need to be done. And we're going to wear our shirts and we're going to just live out the serve mentality. And it'll be brand awareness in the community, but we're serving as we're doing it. So outreach is really good. Maybe you can hook up with a local shelter for abused women, or maybe an orphanage of some kind, or maybe some other organization that you just partner up with to provide them with help and aid in some way, like manpower. And you rally the church around that. It does two things. It kind of unifies the church, and then it also helps and serves the organization that you're working with. So that's one thing, to get out there and serve. And if you do it every year, people kind of know it's coming. So it becomes like a rhythm within the life of the church. Like we just serve in July. September 15th is statistically a great day for people to come back to church. So this is just like running the numbers. Outreach Magazine has ran the numbers. ARC, Association of Churches, has ran the numbers. That September 15th, in fact, ARC, again, just a little bit of backstory. ARC is a church planting organization. In a world where only 1 out of 10 churches survive when they plant, ARC sees a 93% success rate. So they're doing like an amazing job at getting churches to stick. So they say they're only going to approve churches to launch on 2 days, September 15th, and I believe it's January 15th-ish, right around there sometime. They're saying like, we won't support you unless you plant on one of those 2 days, because they just believe so much that that's going to give you the best likelihood of success. And then also Outreach Magazine has this big back to church program that they put out there. So bottom line is, if you could do something in September, maybe you do a community bash of some kind where you just invite kids and families and everything to your church property, and you just throw a celebration, a carnival or something like that together. Maybe you have a series that you are just being intentional about inviting people to this series. I don't know if you ever heard of At the Movies, but it's a series that some churches do that uses movie clips to tell a gospel message. And it's usually very attractional. So again, in September, maybe you could do something that's just very attractional at your church to just get people to come into the doors, because you already know naturally they're settling down for the summer. They want to get back into a flow of things, so you could take advantage of that September.
That's good.
Any other thoughts or questions? Let me ask you guys, have you done something that has been attractional just recently to people outside the church? What does that look like for you?
I feel like I'm talking a lot, but this actually goes into my question. Your question goes into my question, my other question. So I discovered by accident the type of attraction that a baptism would receive. We used to have a separate service, and then one day I decided to go ahead and have it during our regular service. And it was like Easter. It was like Easter Sunday. We had basically what we did was we told all our candidates to send out invitations, just like it was a graduation kind of thing, to all their families and friends. And it packed the house. And one of the things, though, that really bothered me was that we really, I feel like we really didn't capitalize on that. But my question to you is, with these different events that you said, what about the sub events, like the baby dedications and the baptisms on Sunday? What do you think about those? Could those be on ramps as well?
Yeah, so the rule for the on-ramp, and the rule is really just to provide clarity. The rule is that it's an event that is designed to be attractional to the outsider that doesn't come to the church.
Okay.
So I think baby dedications and baptisms are absolutely opportunities where you can get those families and friends that are close to the people to come. So I wouldn't consider it an on-ramp.
Okay.
But it's really kind of in a gray area. So here's what we've seen some churches do that are successful. In fact, we're going to run this play coming up. So Labor Day is coming up, right? So Labor Day is a day where normally people don't come to church on our basis. So we are actually going to put our baby dedications and baptisms on Labor Day this year.
Yeah. Right.
And we're trying. So we're going to announce it ahead of time, and we're going to put those events there because we know that families will show up. It's not an external event for the community to come show up, but we know families will show up. So we don't want to. We're going to be a young church, just 2-3 weeks into launching. So we don't want to lose momentum. We don't want that really big dip on Labor Day. So we're going to put those events there strategically. I've also seen some churches, Elevation Church, they do baptisms probably once every month, and they have a baptism in their lobby. So when you're walking in before service or after service, like in between the two service times, there's people being baptized. And there's other people like taking photos and cheering and family members clapping. So that it creates this really neat environment. And then they just intentionally put that in the lobby to where people walk around that.
Right.
Life.Church, Pastor Craig Rochelle, they do baby dedications in their worship service. So they have like one song, and then the pastor comes up, campus pastor, and says, "Hey, we're going to dedicate our babies." And then everybody walks up to the stage, and while people are walking up to the stage with their babies and with family members, they just explain what baby dedication is. And then the band just plays another song while the pastor goes around and prays for. So everybody worships with the band, but they're seeing that the pastor is dedicating babies, on the stage. And so it becomes a service. It's in the service. It's part of the service. So that all those family members come to experience a service as they experience their nephew get dedicated by the pastors. So I feel like those events can be very strategic because they are attractional to a very select group of people. But make them count. Put them in the service, like you're saying, so they get to experience. Those family members get to experience your presentation of the gospel and everything else.
Yeah.
Michael, regarding, events around September, and I think part of our challenge was just budgetary. We, for this past year was the first year we didn't do it, but previous years, about 4 or 5 years, we would have we termed it Praise in the Park. And it would either be, I think, the weekend after Labor Day or the second weekend after Labor Day. Kids are back in school. And it was around the premise that even though we have many differences, The one thing that is universal is music. Music transcends language. And so what we tried to do is bring in various diverse musical, whether it's religious, secular, you know, groups or choirs or individuals. We would meet in the park near the downtown on a Saturday afternoon for 4 or 5 hours, 3 or 4 hours. And then we would invite the educational community. We would invite the religious community. And oftentimes we were praying that people would just hear the sounds and would just stop by. Over the course of the years, you know, they would stop across the street, and then by about the second or the third year, they would come across the street and start joining in with us. So the concern that I had, and really I want to just throw out there, is we put a substantial amount of money behind that. And just to give you, you know, we're within a 3-iron from Wheaton College. So we do get a number of students. And this was an introduction into the college community. You know, students are just on campus. And another group that we wanted to attract was the unchurched and or the unsaved. And then introduce or reintroduce ourselves to the community. But the concern that I had was that we didn't get the results, you know, even though there were calls to action to come join us. We got, you know, this group, that group, we meet on, et cetera, et cetera. I just didn't see, based on the dollar spent, the return on people at least being interested in our ministry. So I don't know if there's, you know, I just wanted to throw that out there and kind of get your take on it.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with alignment. So what I mean by that is thinking through the event itself, like what is it that's going to be the best next step that is in alignment with the event itself. So it might just be like, instead, like, it's weird when people have a lot of options, they don't do anything, they freeze. So can you, my first thought, and again, we may not be able to solve this problem on the call here, but my first thought is there one thing that you can give to them that says, hey, we're going to be doing this next week. We'd love for you to come. Maybe it's a series, something like that. The other thought is to instead of maybe doing it at, so it's really hard to do a venue, like to do an event at a venue that's not yours and get people to come back to your venue. So it used to be back in the day, like, and people still do it, like they'd have a big Easter service at like the local arena and they'd rent out something. But the flaw in that is people don't get to experience like your actual church. Like they just come for the event. So the natural tendency of people is not to go to church. Then that's just the natural bent for people. So if you can start to create environments that help them begin to come to church. So if you had the event at your church and you help people at least know where the church property is, get familiar with some of the things of the church property, like that might be something that might move the needle for you in the future. So if you do spend that amount of money, maybe it's not the same event, maybe it looks a little bit different. You spend that money, but you have it at the church and you serve the community from your parking lot. And then that way people are that much closer. There's one less hurdle for them to actually come to a weekend service. And then maybe your call to action at the event is that, hey, next week we're going to be, doing this new series about, how we're going to help you get better relationships or something along those lines that people care about. So you might just create alignment to where the goal is the win of that event, the win for spending that money is to get people to come back. So then create the right event that gets them to come back. Any further thoughts or questions?
Mike, between the pastor's his event, I say he does have it at the parking lot. Between that event and getting them to come to Sunday service. Is it more than just telling them, hey, come to hear a new series? Are we capturing information? Are we giving them something? What are we doing to actually get them? Yeah, we have this event. It should be attractional. But what I found is that sometimes that's not enough. How do we move them, or, more from that particular event to that service on Sunday?
Yeah, that's a great. So capturing information is huge. Like that'll be a game changer for you. So at the very least, capture email. So in the marketing world, businesses are sold by the size of their email list. Like other businesses will look at the size of the email list and they'll offer you more money if your email list is bigger. Because email lists are great ways to, they still are, like there's still great ways to engage with people. So yes, you absolutely capture those events and have a plan in place to engage them a day or 2 days after the event via email, or if you can capture like a text message, like a phone number where you can send out text messaging. Like younger people like texts, older people are going to respond more towards emails. So if you can capture a little bit of both, like just, hey, all we need is a first name. Like don't ask for too much. When you ask for people's information, it's like them giving you like $2. You're asking them for something. So don't ask for too much. I just need a name, first name, and then an email. Like that, if that's the bare minimum. So and then maybe first name, last name, email, phone number. Like if you're feeling bold, like if you're going to give away a MacBook Pro, you can ask for like four things. But if you can capture the information and then even provide like different ways to capture that information, like if you have a text this to this number, like text hope to 55554 whatever, like there's services that can help you do that.
Right.
And then you can just create a follow-up system. So what we found is that it takes about 6 weeks of follow-up in order for somebody to actually like move and do something. It takes 12 touches for them to actually come and do something that you're asking them to do. And it shouldn't be like the same. It should be a mix. So email, text, maybe a handwritten letter, maybe it's a phone call. Like just mix it up a little bit. But if you can capture that information at the event, and again, you can capture it maybe with a giveaway. Maybe there's a registration of some kind to enter the event or to attend the event. That's a little bit, I don't know. Usually you want to serve the community. So maybe you have some sort of giveaway of some kind to where you can capture information. Or you could just put a phone number, like a little card or something in a bag or however a flyer that everybody gets that just says, hey, text this this word, hope to this number. And we'd love to stay in contact with you. So you could just ask them straight up to be like, hey, we'll just send you a message after this event's over. It's better than nothing. It's better than them just leaving.
Right.
But yeah, just capture that information. If they like you at all, they're going to want to at least stay in touch with like, hey, tell me what's coming up next.
Okay.
So Pastor Williams, just really quick, if you move that event to your church property, spent that budget on property, and then captured some emails and followed up with that, and you had a great like next step, and a great next step might be maybe some sort of a series, like a relationship series that is going on for like 2 or 3 weeks or 4 weeks after the event. So people have multiple chances to come to the series, and you're following up with them in multiple ways. Then maybe that event now starts to move the needle for the church.
Yeah, that's an option. We just kind of put it on pause as we kind of relook at, what we could do better. That's one of the things that we'll add to it. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, and millennials love to serve. So if you were able to say, hey, bring a canned good and you donate to whatever. So there's some other elements that, based on the audience, the town that you're in, you might be able to build around.
Amen.
There's a service called Text in Church. If you haven't checked them out before, you might check them out. Text in Church, And they basically are a service that allows you to create text and emails, text messages and emails, and send them out on a regular basis. So if somebody comes and visits, you put them into the system, and then like over the next 5-6 weeks, they get messages at regular intervals, not too much, not too little, just to kind of keep them in the loop.
Sounds good.
Okay, just one more thing I want to share with you, but this is unofficial stuff. So if you have questions, jump in there, ask your questions. I just wanted to show you. I went to this church that did a on-ramp for Easter. So Easter was, they started this series, and of course this church has big budget. You can kind of see. So they did a series called, they did Easter, and then they invited people back to this series called Heroes and Villains. And the Marvel movie just got released at the time. And so they're just kind of riding that wave. So let me just say, like, the message is the gospel. Like, I attended the service, it's the gospel message. Basically, all they did was put up these posters and created invites that had this theme on it of heroes and villains. So the message, like I sat in here and I listened to this message, and it was about Gideon and the whole 300 and all that stuff. So it was Gideon being a hero, basically. And you just preached the message, like you would any other message, but it was just surrounded in this wrapper of this thing. So this is a church in this community. Where we are in South Florida, it's really, really hard to reach people. 93% of people don't go to church in this area. So if you want people to come to your church, you have to try something. Like you can't just be whatever you have been. You have to try something. So this church was trying something, and they're actually one of the thriving churches in the area. They have multiple campuses, probably 4 campuses, and this church campus itself had probably 3,000 or so on a weekend. So this is kind of what it looked like. So they created an on-ramp for Easter and pointed people. The call to action was to come back for this series. As people came back to the series, they created a great guest experience. Gotta love the palm trees, right? So they have a New Year tent outside that's welcoming people. They have a cafe area serving coffee. They're just creating environments that are welcoming towards new people to help them feel comfortable. It's a big, wide entryway where people can walk around. They have a kids ministry that's very well marked and highlighted. And they even have like a little promotion for their next kids event. That's just a quick look. Here's just another quick look. So again, just attractional stuff. These are actually my kids playing around on this these animals, but they created an environment that that kids love to be a part of. Like, they just walked in there, and so they're very intentional about, man, we want kids' eyes to pop out of their heads when they come to the church and to have fun. So they put a lot of emphasis in that. Here we go. So this is some more of the kids' hallways. They're clearly marking everything. They're creating an attractional church. They're sharing values. So with kids ministry, you communicate with the kids in the class, but you communicate to the parents outside the class. Right. So the parents, you need to communicate, hey, we are not babysitting. We are creating, very intentionally creating children that will have a moral compass, that will love Jesus and do the right things and all that stuff. So that's your opportunity. All the hallway stuff is great for kids, but man, I tell you what, it communicates a lot to parents. So I love to go to different churches and then provide perspective on, like, here's what maybe another church is doing. Not that you have to do anything like this, but it just gives you perspective on what other churches are doing.
So just to piggyback on that, I mean, so this is a very highly resourced church. What is your experience like with older, more traditional or smaller churches? Which we are in that category, how can we get to the point where we don't have the facilities nor the resources to do anything like that. But we're open to doing things that are within our reach. And so I think that's really what the challenge is. When you have limited resources or you have limited facilities.
Yeah, I need to have Bishop Vaughn come on. We worked with Bishop Vaughn for a while, and he was an older traditional church. Bishop is probably 65, 65 years old, been pastoring for a long time. Before him, his father was pastoring, and before him, his father was pastoring. And the church has been around since the 1950s in that area. So what we did was he decided that he needed to change things. So that he could reach a younger congregation. But he just started really small and started moving towards a attractional model. So what I mean by that is that he felt, this is his words, he felt that he had built a club for like-minded people, and they were all just kind of hanging out together. And so he wanted to now reach outside the walls. So we did some simple things. I guess let me get to the practical stuff. One of the first things was to put up a big screen TV in the lobby and take down the bulletin board. So the big screen TV went up, and we started to run slides, and that was kind of a small change that we made, moving them kind of in this direction. He did it kind of slowly because he had a lot of older members who resisted too much change. We painted the hallways kind of a neutral gray color, just to update it from the beige that had been there for a while. He eventually removed the pews in the auditorium. Little by little, he raised some money and put in some seats in the auditorium. And then after that, we created a backdrop for the stage that was fairly inexpensive, but it covered kind of the back wall of the stage and had like this kind of graphic print that just kind of went up and covered the back of the stage. And then he added some lighting and some other things, just a little bit over time, and began to move more in this direction. So, and now he even kind of changed his teaching a little bit. Like it's still the same stuff, but he packages into series so that on a marketing side, he can promote the series. So now there's a graphic that's created for the series. And then they can share that on Facebook, and they can share that, other people can share it on Instagram. And now he can promote it. Like it gives him some teeth to kind of put some stuff out there that people can be attracted to. And then we added Facebook, like slowly adding Facebook advertising, where we put some ad dollars. He was on the radio, he came off the radio, and we took that budget and put it towards Facebook ads. And by targeting on Facebook ads, we were able to get better results towards reaching the people in that area. So I don't know if that helps Pastor Williams, but it was a very slow process of like just making some small changes. And he actually kept most of the people that were with him. Like none of them revolted. And not that I know of anyway. Most of them stuck around, are on board with the new vision that he's put out there of like, hey, it's not just about us. This is about this community. And he actually started to do some events too, where they would go out to the local park, and then he would invite my team to come and shoot video footage of it, and then we'd be able to share that on Facebook and some other things, and show like, hey, this is what our church is about, and start to build that culture a little bit at a time.
Yeah,
that helps. I just want to know, what the low-hanging fruit is. As long as we can keep picking that, I think we're okay. But when you see pictures like what you got on the screen now, I say that's beyond where we are right now. But what is achievable for us? So those are some things that gives us some encouragement.
Awesome. I might actually, that's a great idea. I might ask Bishop Vaughn to one day join us and kind of talk through some of that. That's a great idea. All right. Any other thoughts or questions? If I try to honor your time because I want you to come back and join me, so I'm not taking up too much of your time during the middle of the week. Hopefully it's helpful. But any other thoughts or questions that you have?
Okay.
I'm gonna wrap up then. This is the Story Brand book. It's called Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. If you're looking for a great resource to help you with your marketing, this is a great book. It's a business book, but it talks about inviting people into a story, and it just applies so well to churches. Like, it's amazing how it applies to churches, because that's what we're doing. Like, we're helping people to join a better story, right? That's kind of what we're all about. There's a God story that's happening. We just need to jump up and be part of that God story. So this framework, it kind of looks like this. There's a character who has a problem, who meets a guide. By the way, we're the guide as the church. We point them to Jesus. So we have a plan. So the plan is know God, find freedom, discover purpose, make a difference. That's what it is for us as our church. So what is the plan that you have? Make that really simple. Step one, step two, step three. But just help people understand what it is. Like, knowing God seems so out there for most people. If you can just help them know, like, hey, all you got to do is come to church, get into a small group, and go through a discipleship class, that helps them say, okay, I can do that. So a good guide, if you're going to climb Mount Everest, you need a good guide that says, all you got to do is this, this, and this. And that you're going to trust that guide to get you up there. That's what we need to do with the church. And that's what this book kind of unpacks. And you need to have a call to action. It's that word we've been talking about. Make sure you call people to action. Don't just do something without a clear next step for them. And then also make sure you understand what failure looks like and what success looks like. Mm-hmm. So if they're successful, they're going to live that greater story. They're going to find purpose. They're going to make a difference. If they're not successful, they're going to be wandering through life. Like, you have to be able to communicate that you understand, you have empathy, and you understand, like, who they are. So again, the book begins to unpack this. So it's a great resource if you want to check it out to go a little bit further. And next meeting is on June 11th. So I've been working on the platform itself. We've got a decent number of people now that's part of the membership, which is great. So I'm starting to build it out to create more of a resource out of it. So in the next week or two, I'm hoping to release like an online, like a web page where you can access this video or other videos, and then also the resources, and just be able to go back there and access it. For right now, it's on our Facebook group. So you should have that link. If you don't have that link, feel free to just give me a shout. I was going to pull it up, but feel free to give me a shout. I'll give you that link, and I'll try to send it out just on a regular basis. But feel free to give me a shout. And then the last thing I want to tell you is just on a website, like, what does this look like on a website to have a call to action? So this is a new website I'm working on. It's not actually released yet. It's for a church, another church. But on the very top, it says plan a visit. In the middle of the screen, it says plan a visit. As you scroll down further on this page, you're going to see again, plan a visit. Mm-hmm. Right here in the middle of the page. So we just want to make sure that it's very clear, like, the call to action that we want people to understand on the website is to plan a visit. And we want to implement that on all of our materials. But the website's the front door. It's the main hub of your marketing. So we just want to make sure that it's speaking clearly to people that are checking out your church for the first time, and making it really intuitive and easy for them to take that next step, which is to show up on Sunday. So it's like a football game. Your website just needs to move them 10 yards down the field to show up on Sunday. Once they show up on Sunday, you just got to move them 10 more yards down the field to come back to their next service. And then you just keep on playing that game. How can you get them further and further down the field until they are contributors? They're on the serve team, and they're donating and they're giving. You're not going to get that all at once, but take them step by step, and you'll get them there eventually. All right. Well, that's all I've got. Any final thoughts or questions before we close out for today?
No.
Okay, I will send out a follow-up email in the next day or so, just with links to videos and any resources. Feel free to reach out to me if you need anything. I think everybody has my email, so you can do that. And